The news hit like a thunderclap. Phones buzzed across the coffee shop, screens lighting up with the same headline. Supreme Court rules on data privacy law, major impact on social media. Within seconds, the quiet hum of conversation turned into a low, confused roar. People scrolled, frowned, whispered. The air felt charged, like the moment before a storm. At the corner table, Rachel, a 30-something digital marketing consultant, stared at her phone. Her coffee sat untouched. The ruling was still fresh, but the implications were already racing through her mind. This wasn't just another tech headline. This could change everything. How she worked, how companies advertised, even how people shared their lives online. "This is bad," she muttered under her breath. Across from her, Devin, her longtime friend and occasional debate partner, looked up from his laptop. Calm, collected, a little too comfortable for Rachel's taste. "Bad for who?" he asked. His tone wasn't mocking, just curious, the way scientists sound when they're studying something fascinating. "For everyone," Rachel shot back, still scrolling. "They're saying companies can't collect or store user data without explicit consent, can't use behavior tracking, can't target ads the same way. You know what that means? Chaos. Every business that relies on digital marketing, from tiny Etsy shops to global brands, is about to get crushed." Devin raised an eyebrow. "Or maybe it means people finally get a say in what happens to their personal information. You talk about chaos, but maybe what we've had until now is too much order, the kind that hides what's really going on." Rachel leaned back, exasperated. "Come on, Devin. You think the average person wants to fill out 10 forms just to check their favorite site? People say they care about privacy, but what they really care about is convenience." He smiled faintly. Maybe convenience is the problem. The tension between them wasn't new. They'd been friends since college, always on the same political side, but never quite agreeing on how that side should act. Rachel believed in progress through systems, through growth. Devin believed in reform through disruption. Both cared deeply, but their paths to better always collided. Around them, other conversations were catching fire. A group of college students argued near the counter. One said the court's decision was a victory for the people. Another warned it would kill innovation. A barista turned up the volume on a small radio behind the counter, where a news anchor was summarizing the decision in careful, serious tones. Rachel couldn't focus. She saw her future clients, her projects, her campaigns, all hanging by a thread. "You know what'll happen?" she said, voice sharper now. "Big companies will survive. They always do. They have lawyers, they have tools, they'll adapt. But small businesses? They'll drown. This law won't protect the little guy. It'll protect the giants." Devin didn't flinch. "Maybe. Or maybe it'll force the big ones to stop hoarding power. You ever think about how much they know about us? What we buy, where we go, what we say. We gave them that power, and now everyone's shocked they're using it." Rachel shook her head. People wanted those features. Social media gave us connection, community, opportunity. I've seen it change lives. "My clients built careers on platforms you say are the problem." He set his coffee down. "Connection shouldn't come with surveillance." For a moment, neither spoke. The sounds of the cafe filled the silence. Espresso machines hissing, doors opening, fragments of debate floating from other tables. Outside, a light drizzle began to fall, blurring the reflections in the window. Rachel's phone buzzed again. Group chat notifications lighting up one after another. Her friends were already fighting about the news. Some cheering, some furious. Everyone talking at once. Devin looked at her, reading the frustration on her face. "You know, Rach, every time something big happens, people act like it's the end of the world. Maybe it's just the start of something different." She met his eyes, calm but defiant. "Different isn't always better. Neither is staying the same," he said. Their words hung between them like static. There was no yelling, no insults, just a sharp awareness that they were standing on opposite sides of a widening fault line. A young woman at the next table interrupted, her voice trembling with emotion as she spoke to her friend. "They say it's about privacy, but what if it hurts people who rely on social media to survive? My sister runs a handmade jewelry shop online. She depends on ads to reach customers. If targeting's gone, so are her sales." Her friend, shaking his head, replied, "But don't you get it? We've all become products. Maybe this ruling gives us a chance to be human again." Rachel listened, realizing how that small argument echoed her own. Two people, same side politically, same goals deep down, but completely different visions of what fairness meant. She turned back to Devin. "You think this ruling is about freedom," she said quietly. "But freedom for one person might mean limitation for another. There's always a trade," he nodded. "That's true, but sometimes the trade's worth it." The cafe's energy kept building, like the air before lightning. Every table seemed to host a debate now. Students, freelancers, retirees, all dissecting the same decision from different angles. No one could agree, but no one could walk away either. Rachel closed her laptop, finally taking a sip of cold coffee. "You know what scares me most?" she said. "Not the ruling itself. It's how fast people turn on each other. Everyone's so sure they're right. Even us." Devon's expression softened. "Maybe that's just democracy doing its messy thing." She gave a small, weary laugh. "Feels more like a family argument no one can escape." He smiled. "That's what families do." Outside, the rain thickened, streaking the glass with silver lines. Inside, the noise faded for a moment, a lull between waves of conversation. Rachel glanced once more at the headline on her phone. It looked dramatic, almost theatrical. Supreme Court decision sparks national divide among lawmakers. But the divide wasn't just in Congress. It was right here, at every table, in every group chat, between friends who still cared about the same future, but couldn't agree on how to reach it. Rachel slipped her phone into her bag and stood. "I have to get to a client meeting," she said. "They'll want to know what this means for them." Devon nodded, standing too. "Tell them it means change, whether they like it or not." As she walked out into the rain, Rachel thought about how fast the world could shift with just one decision. It wasn't the court that scared her. It was the uncertainty that followed. She knew she and Devon would keep debating, maybe for years, and maybe that was the point. Because in a world where even allies could disagree so fiercely, maybe the real challenge wasn't choosing a side. It was learning how to keep talking when everyone felt like shouting. And as thunder rolled faintly in the distance, Rachel realized this was only the beginning. Rachel's phone didn't stop buzzing all evening. The group chat that once shared memes and weekend plans had turned into a full-blown debate. The Supreme Court ruling on data privacy had split her friends right down the middle. The chat, called Progressive Pulse, was supposed to be a safe space. Now it was a storm. "Finally," wrote Lena, her old college roommate and now a high school teacher, "people deserve control over their data. This law is overdue." Almost instantly, Eli, a software engineer who worked for a startup in San Francisco, shot back. "Easy for you to say, Lena. You don't build apps for a living. This will destroy small tech companies. Regulations like this only make the big ones stronger." Rachel sighed and put her phone down for a moment, staring at the glowing city outside her window. The sky was pink, fading into gray, the kind of evening that usually calmed her. Not tonight. Her job depended on understanding how people behaved online. What they clicked, what they bought, what they ignored. The court's decision had thrown that world into chaos overnight. She picked up her phone again. The arguments had multiplied. Someone posted a link to an opinion piece calling the ruling a new digital revolution. Another friend shared a thread warning it could collapse online. Advertising. Rachel tried to type something balanced, something that would cool the tension. "Maybe both sides have a point," she wrote. "We need privacy, but we also need innovation. There has to be a middle ground." Seconds later, Maya, an activist and journalist, replied, "Middle ground? Rachel, companies have abused people's data for years. You profit from that system. Don't act neutral." The message stung. Rachel wasn't used to being accused of anything political. She saw herself as practical. She worked in marketing, not manipulation. But suddenly, her career was being framed as part of the problem. Devon texted her privately. "Told you. The family dinner just started." She didn't respond. Instead, she watched as her friends kept arguing. Thoughtful people, good people, turning on each other in frustration. Everyone was angry, not just at the ruling, but at what it represented. A fight over who got to shape the digital world that ruled their lives. Later that night, Rachel called her father. He had spent 30 years as a newspaper journalist before retiring. He picked up on the second ring. "You sound tense," he said. "Yeah," Rachel sighed. "Everyone's losing their minds about this ruling. My clients are panicking, my friends are fighting, and I'm starting to wonder if I'm on the wrong side of something." Her father chuckled softly. "When people are scared, they always think in sides. But this isn't about right or wrong. It's about control. Who gets it, and who gives it up?" She frowned. "You mean the government versus corporations?" "Exactly. And neither one likes to lose power," he said. "But don't forget, every generation has this moment. The printing press, radio, television. Every time technology changes, society panics before it adjusts." Rachel leaned back in her chair. "So you think this will blow over?" "I think it'll transform. People always adapt," he said. "But the question is, will we learn to balance freedom with fairness?" She didn't have an answer. The next morning, her team meeting was tense. The company's digital department was a mix of analysts, designers, and ad specialists. All Democrats, all progressives, yet completely divided. Cal, the analytics lead, slammed his notebook on the table. "We can't target users anymore. That means our ad spend triples. We'll lose half our clients." Mona, a younger strategist, crossed her arms. "Maybe that's the point. People didn't sign up to be followed online like lab rats." "Maybe the industry needs to rebuild trust," Cal groaned. "Trust doesn't pay the bills, Mona." Rachel tried to mediate. "Okay, calm down. We can't fix this overnight. But we can start rethinking how we collect data. Maybe use surveys, community feedback, user choice models." Cal interrupted. "That's not scalable." "Neither is ignoring the law," she said firmly. Silence filled the room. For the first time, Rachel realized how deep the divide ran. These weren't political opposites. They were colleagues who voted the same way, went to the same rallies, believed in the same values, and still couldn't agree on how to move forward. At lunch, she sat outside with Mona, who scrolled through her phone, frowning at another wave of social media debates. "It's crazy," Mona said. "People are acting like this is the end of the world. But isn't this what progress looks like? It's supposed to be uncomfortable." Rachel nodded slowly. "Maybe, but discomfort's easier when you're not the one losing your job." Mona looked at her with quiet sympathy. "You're not wrong, but if the old system was built on exploiting people's information, maybe it deserves to collapse." Rachel thought about that as she walked back inside. Was her work really exploitation? She'd always believed digital marketing helped businesses grow. Local stores, artists, entrepreneurs. It wasn't about manipulation, it was about connection. Or had she just convinced herself of that? That night, the arguments online grew sharper. People posted screenshots of politicians fighting on TV. Democrats accusing other Democrats of betraying true values. Some said the court had done what lawmakers were too scared to do. Others said the court had overreached, stifling innovation and setting the country back 10 years. Rachel scrolled through comments for hours, feeling her anxiety grow. She wanted to believe there was a solution where everyone could win, where privacy and progress could coexist. But every argument felt like a tug-of-war that had no middle ground. Her phone buzzed again. A message from Devin. "See the Senate hearing today?" One Democrat called the ruling a data disaster. Another called it a freedom milestone. "Same party, opposite conclusions." She replied, "Yeah, feels like we're breaking apart from the inside." He answered, "Or waking up." Rachel set her phone down and turned off the lights. The city outside was still glowing. Lights from screens, offices, cars, all running on data. Everything connected, everything dependent. She thought about how fragile it all was, how easily one court ruling could shake an entire system. The next morning, her inbox overflowed. Clients wanted updates, strategies, reassurance. She typed the same thing over and over. "We're adapting to the new privacy standards. It will take time, but we'll find solutions." But deep down, she wasn't sure what those solutions would look like. The rules had changed overnight, and the digital world she had built her career around was suddenly full of question marks. That evening, Rachel met Devin for a walk. The park was quiet except for the rustle of leaves. They didn't argue this time. They just walked thinking. Finally, she said, "You were right. It's more than a policy change. It's like watching the floor shift under everyone's feet." Devin nodded. "And maybe that's good. People get careless when the ground feels too stable." She smiled faintly. "You always say that. And you always worry too much," he replied. "But that's why these conversations matter. We keep each other honest." They stopped by a bench overlooking the city skyline. Lights blinked across buildings like signals in the dark. Millions of tiny digital connections holding the modern world together. Rachel looked out, her thoughts heavy but clear. The arguments, the confusion, the fear. Maybe they weren't signs of collapse, but signs of evolution. People cared enough to fight, to question, to imagine something better. She turned to Devin. "You know what's funny? Everyone's fighting about who's right, but maybe the real answer isn't one side winning. Maybe it's learning to rebuild together." Devin smiled. "Now that," he said, "sounds like progress." As they sat in silence, the city kept humming, uncertain, divided, alive, just like democracy itself. The tension had spread far beyond Rachel's group chat. What started as an online debate had now spilled into the national spotlight. Every major network was talking about the same thing, the Supreme Court's data privacy ruling, and the country couldn't look away. For the first time in years, members of the same political party were publicly clashing over what progress really meant. Rachel sat on her couch, laptop open, watching the live broadcast of a Senate hearing. Two Democratic senators, both from tech-heavy states, were tearing into each other on live television. One accused the other of protecting billion-dollar corporations. The other fired back, saying that overregulation would kill innovation and cost thousands of jobs. It was heated but controlled, the kind of fight that revealed how deep the cracks had become. Rachel rubbed her temples. "It's like watching a family argument on national TV," she muttered. Her phone buzzed. A message from Devon. "Looks like the family dinner went public," she typed back. "Yeah, and nobody's listening," the hearing continued. Lawmakers quoted studies, argued about surveillance, shouted about digital freedom. It was dramatic, but Rachel didn't see villains. She saw fear. Fear of losing control. Fear of making the wrong call in a world changing faster than anyone could manage. When the broadcast ended, Rachel turned off her screen and just sat there, thinking. The court's decision had triggered something deeper than legal reform. It had forced everyone to confront how dependent they were on the digital world. Every business, every conversation, every daily habit was tied to data, and now that invisible network was under scrutiny. The next day at work, the tension followed her into the office. The marketing firm's open floor plan, usually buzzing with laughter and brainstorming, felt quiet and heavy. People spoke in careful tones, avoiding certain topics. During the morning meeting, her boss, Tara, stood at the front of the room with a calm but serious face. "Everyone's feeling the pressure," she said. "Clients are nervous. Some are pausing campaigns. We need to adjust. I'd not panic." Cal raised his hand. "Adjust how? If we can't track what audiences are doing online, how do we target them?" "Guess," Tara sighed. "We adapt. New tools will come. Maybe smaller, slower ones, but we'll find them." Rachel spoke up. "We could shift toward community-driven marketing. More direct engagement, less tracking." Cal shook his head. "That sounds idealistic. Clients want numbers, not feelings." The room went quiet. Everyone looked tired. Rachel noticed how divided they were. Not just in opinion, but in trust. People were starting to look at each other differently, wondering who stood where in this new digital battle. At lunch, Rachel sat alone in the break room, scrolling through her feed. Every post felt like a war cry. Influencers, journalists, professors, everyone had a take. Some called the ruling a win for human rights. Others warned it would push American tech behind the rest of the world. And in the comments, ordinary people argued like politicians. She saw a video of two young entrepreneurs crying as they explained that their startup might collapse because of the new data limits. Then she saw another video of a privacy advocate saying, "Maybe it's time we stop letting companies profit off our digital fingerprints." Both voices sounded sincere. Both believed they were protecting people. Rachel closed the app. Her head spun. It wasn't just a legal issue anymore. It was emotional. People felt betrayed, empowered, terrified, all at once. That evening, she went to her friend Maya's apartment for a small get-together. The air was thick with the smell of coffee and frustration. Maya, ever the activist, was mid-rant. "This is what we fought for! Real accountability! For years, companies have gotten away with everything." Across the room, Eli replied sharply. "You say that like you don't use those same apps every day. You want accountability? Fine. But don't act shocked when it hurts people who depend on those systems." Lena jumped in. "So what? We just let corporations run free because we're scared of change?" Eli snapped back. "No, but maybe we don't destroy the economy in the process." The argument grew louder, faster. Rachel tried to speak, but gave up. They weren't listening. Everyone talked at once, voices overlapping until it became noise. She sat back and realized something. They were all passionate, all right in their own ways, and all completely disconnected from each other. She slipped out onto the balcony, breathing in the cool night air. The city lights blinked like tiny data points, endless and alive. Devon texted her again. "You okay?" She replied, "Everyone's fighting again. Same topic, same noise. That's democracy," he answered. Messy but honest. She smiled faintly. Maybe he was right. Maybe this chaos wasn't collapse. It was the sound of people waking up, realizing how tangled their lives had become with technology they barely understood. The next morning, Rachel watched a new segment go viral. The anchor described the debate within the Democratic Party as an identity crisis. The word stuck with her. Identity. That's what this was about. Not laws, not marketing, not politics. Everyone was trying to decide what kind of society they wanted to be. One that prized innovation, or one that prioritized protection. Both mattered. Both clashed. At work, tensions reached a boiling point. A client video call turned into a shouting match between departments. Cal insisted they push back against the ruling. Mona argued they should rebuild their approach from scratch. Tara tried to mediate, but no one wanted to back down. When the call ended, the office fell silent. Rachel looked around and saw the fatigue on everyone's faces, the exhaustion of people who cared too much and understood too little about what came next. That night, she called her father again. "It's not just disagreement anymore," she said quietly. "It's like we're splitting apart. Not just the country, the people who used to be on the same team." Her father's voice was steady. "Division isn't always destruction. Sometimes it's the sign of growth. Ideas evolve by clashing. What matters is what survives the clash." She sat in silence, thinking about his words. Maybe the fighting wasn't a symptom of failure, but a sign of transformation. Later, Rachel met Devin for dinner. The restaurant was busy, full of overlapping conversations. Laughter mixed with tension, the soundtrack of modern life. Devin grinned when he saw her. "You look like you've been reading too many opinion pieces." "Guilty," she said, smiling weakly. They ate, talked about work, about how exhausting it was to care about everything all the time. When their plates were empty, Rachel said, "It feels like no one trusts anyone anymore. Everyone's so sure they're the only one who's right." Devin nodded. "That's what happens when a belief becomes identity. We stop debating ideas and start defending ourselves." She looked out the window, watching the streetlights blur past cars. "It's weird, though," she said softly. "Even with all this chaos, I think people still want the same thing. To be seen, to be safe, to be respected." Devin smiled. "Exactly. They just disagree on how to get there." As they left the restaurant, the city felt different. Not calmer, but clearer. The arguments would continue, the divisions would deepen, but beneath all the noise was something real. People wrestling with the cost of progress. Rachel realized then that maybe democracy wasn't supposed to be comfortable. Maybe it was supposed to be like this. Imperfect, loud, full of conflict, but still moving forward. As they walked under the streetlights, she said quietly, "You know what's funny? Everyone's trying to win the argument. But maybe the argument itself is the win." Devin looked at her, impressed. "Now that's something worth building on." They kept walking, their footsteps blending with the hum of the city. A reminder that even in division, life went on and the conversation never really ended. A week passed, and the noise began to fade. The headlines had moved on, the social media arguments slowed, and people finally seemed tired of fighting. The Supreme Court ruling was still shaping policies, still creating uncertainty, but the initial wave of panic had passed. What remained was quiet, the kind of silence that comes after a storm, when everyone starts to realize what's left standing. Rachel sat by her apartment window, watching the city wake up. The same skyline, the same traffic, the same routines. But something in the air felt different. People were thinking more, talking softer. The ruling hadn't destroyed anything. It had simply exposed how fragile their digital world had become. She opened her laptop and looked through her messages. The group chat that once exploded with arguments was now mostly empty. A few shared articles, some sent memes to break the tension, but the fire had gone out. It was almost peaceful. She typed a short message. "So, do we all still talk, or did democracy officially break us?" Lena replied with a laughing emoji. Eli sent a simple, "Still friends." Maya wrote, "Still fighting for what's right, but maybe with less yelling." Rachel smiled. It wasn't resolution, but it was something. People had burned through their outrage and rediscovered a little perspective. They hadn't changed their beliefs. They had just learned that shouting didn't make understanding come faster. Later that day, she met Devin again at their usual coffee shop. The energy inside was calmer than the week before. People still discussed the ruling, but in softer tones. The tension had turned into reflection. Devin was already there, reading from his tablet. "Well," he said when she sat down. "It seems the world didn't end," Rachel smirked. "I was half expecting riots in the streets. Instead, people just got tired and went back to work." "That's how change usually happens," he said. "Loud at first, quiet in the end." They sipped their coffee in silence for a moment. Outside, a group of students walked by holding signs that read, "Protect privacy, protect progress." Rachel watched them go, thoughtful. "You know," she said, "I don't think anyone was completely wrong in this debate. Everyone was just scared of losing something important." Devin nodded. "Exactly. Fear makes people pick sides, even when they're chasing the same goal." She leaned forward. "What do you think happens next?" He smiled faintly. "The same thing that's always happened. People argue, then adapt. New laws get tested. New tech gets built. Life keeps moving. Rachel thought about her job, her clients, her friends, all the people who had been shaken by this change. She realized that even though everyone had fought, no one had truly wanted destruction. They all wanted a future that felt fair, safe, and hopeful. They had just disagreed about how to get there. That week, her company held a team meeting to discuss the new normal. Instead of panic, the room felt focused. Cal was already brainstorming alternative strategies. Mona presented a new idea for user-driven ad permissions, a concept that would give customers more control while keeping businesses afloat. For the first time since the ruling, people were smiling. Tara clapped her hands. See, we're adjusting. This isn't the end of marketing. It's just the next version of it. Rachel looked around the room. The tension was still there, but it had shifted into something productive. Disagreement had become energy. She felt proud, not just of the team, but of how people could fight, fall apart, and still find a way to rebuild. That evening, she called her father. "You were right," she said. "Things are settling down," he chuckled. "Of course. People can only stay angry for so long. Eventually, they remember they still have to live." Rachel laughed softly. "I think everyone just realized that progress doesn't come from winning arguments. It comes from what we do afterward." Her father's tone warmed. "That's the lesson, kid. History isn't made by who yells the loudest. It's made by who keeps working when the noise fades." That night, Rachel walked through the park near her apartment. The air was crisp, the trees glowing under the streetlights. She passed couples holding hands, joggers with earbuds, kids chasing each other near the fountain. Life was normal again, or maybe it always had been. The ruling hadn't broken the world. It had just forced people to look closer at how much they relied on invisible systems. As she sat on a bench, she saw a man nearby scrolling on his phone, smiling at something. A woman beside him laughed at a video. Despite all the debates about privacy, data, and freedom, people were still connected, still using technology to share small, human moments. Maybe that was the real truth. The tools themselves weren't the enemy. The danger came when people forgot to question how they were used. She pulled out her phone and texted Devin. "So, is this what peace looks like?" He replied, "More like halftime. We'll argue again next time something big happens." She smiled. He was right. The debates wouldn't stop. Not about technology, politics, or progress. They were part of what kept society alive. The next morning, Rachel joined a virtual conference about the new privacy landscape. Dozens of people spoke: marketers, developers, professors, activists. What surprised her wasn't the disagreement but the tone. People were asking questions instead of shouting. There was curiosity, not just criticism. Someone said, "We can undo the digital world, but we can learn to make it more human." The line stuck with her. After the meeting, Rachel walked outside, feeling strangely hopeful. She thought about the chaos of the past week, the arguments, the confusion, the exhaustion, and realized that maybe democracy wasn't supposed to be smooth. Maybe it was meant to feel like this. Messy, passionate, full of friction but still pushing forward. That evening she met Devin again. One last coffee before the week ended. The cafe was quiet, warm with the smell of roasted beans. They talked about everything except politics, movies, food, travel. But before they left, Rachel said, "You know what the real nightmare news was?" He looked up. "What?" "That we forgot how to disagree without breaking apart." Devin nodded slowly. "Yeah, but maybe this was a reminder. We can fight and still care about each other. We can argue and still move forward." Rachel smiled. Then maybe this was never a nightmare. Maybe it was just a wake-up call. They stood up and stepped outside into the cool evening air. The city buzzed around them, alive, flawed, resilient. People walked by with coffee cups and headphones, talking about the next big thing. The world hadn't ended. It had simply changed. As they walked down the street, Rachel felt lighter. The arguments, the fear, the exhaustion, all of it had led to something valuable. Understanding. Not perfect, not complete, but real. And that was enough. She looked at Devin and said, "You know, for all the noise, I think people just want the same thing. To feel heard." He smiled. "Then maybe that's where progress starts." They kept walking, their laughter fading into the hum of the city. A reminder that even in disagreement, life moves forward. And somewhere in that noise, between all the clashing ideas and restless hope, democracy found its rhythm again.